Welcome back to Rav Pinson's podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern man. Today's episode was sponsored by Avraham ben Moshe in honor of a refuah shalema ukreva for his father. Today's episode is part 2 in a special Sukkot edition Q&A and the 7th in our Q&A series.
What's the idea of Simchat Beis Hashoeiva, where we're dancing the night away throughout Sukkot?
Okay. So what is the idea of Simchat Beis Hashoeiva? So the first we have to understand what Simchat Beis Hashoeiva. Very simply, Simchat Beis Hashoeiva was a time that they would dance on the first night of Chol Hamoed, the first night when it became no longer holiday, and they would dance and they would juggle fire, and it was like a big experience. And the sages, Chazal, the Talmud says that Misha Lora Simchas Beis Hashoeiva, Lora Simchas B'Yom. If you didn't see Simchas Beis Hashoeiva, the joy that happened that night, or those nights, you didn't see joy in your life. It was a very, very joyful time. So it's interesting how we can understand. There's one way, there's like the technical reason that we can understand this, which is like the Rambam's.
What is Simchas Beis?
Oh, right. Oh, so it's right. What is Simchas Beis Hashoeiva? It's a simcha. So simcha literally means the joy of the drawing of the drawing in the house. So what does that mean? So and it has to do with they used to draw the water during Sukkot. There was a special type of ceremony. Then in addition to pouring the libation that they would put on the altar on the mizbeach, wine, they would also pour water. But they have to gather the water. So in the gathering the water the night before, so there's a verse that says, "V'shafta mayim esas," and you will gather the water with great joy. And somehow these two things were connected. That became joy, the joy of the gathering of the water the night before that they did the libation and nischamayim. That's what Sukkot. Okay, that's the technical thing. But if you look at the Rambam, for example, just technically, this one point. The Rambam, Maimonides, when he talks about Simchas Beis Hashoeiva, this celebration, the Rambam says that since the Torah itself says you should celebrate Sukkot, be joyful, the Torah speaks about it being joyful 3 times, which means that it's an exaggerated amount of times that the Torah is saying it. So because of that, as a sort of like an expression of that type of joy, they dance by night. And it's almost like a coincidental thing that it happened with the gathering of the water. They danced on Sukkot because it was a time of joy, extra joy. But Rashi clearly writes in the Gemara in Sukkot, Rashi really says that no, it has to do with the drawing of the water that created the joy. So V'shafta mayim esas, when they drew the water, that brought joy. Now we can understand this on a very deep inner pneumistic level, on a deep inner level. That it's like this, that joy, it's a big word, joy, but like, and what exactly that means, but on some forms of joy, and the sasan, the simcha, different types of joy, there's 10 forms of joy. The sasan and simcha have a big argument, who's actually more important, who's higher, and there's very deep secrets in the Talmud based on this conversation. But there's some type of joy when a person reclaims something that was lost. Let's say, for a simple example, let's say you're trying to drive your car. You wake up in the morning and you have to go somewhere. You have to go to shul. You have to go somewhere. You drive your children to school, and there's no keys. I don't know. Now you don't need so much keys today, but there's no key. You can't have. You don't have a key, and you go frantic. The baby has to get to school, and there's babysitter. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. So something has to happen, and you don't have a key. There's no key. And then probably one of your children probably hid the key or something, and everyone looks all around the house. And finally, there's a simcha shtetl, it's a big joy because the keys are reclaimed. You found the key. Now, if you pick up in the morning, you found the keys, it wouldn't be such a joy. The fact that you lost it, then you find that there's something about the reclaiming of something that was lost that brings us joy. It's like something we thought that we didn't have, something that we let go, and then we reclaim it, that creates joy. So let's understand on a very pneumistic, on a deep level, what is the idea of this, the joy of drawing of the waters? What waters? What are you talking about? So there's this, what I'm going to say now is not historically correct. It's spiritually correct. So there's an idea in Rosh Hashanah, and it's symbolic, but the symbolic is always true. But the actuality, the idea of Rosh Hashanah, there's a custom. It's a minig Ashkenaz. It's time for the Maril. It's time for the 1500s, 1400s. There was a custom that developed. Not that's considered a regular custom. Everyone does this. Is to do tashlach. What do you do tashlach? Tashlach is a custom that on Rosh Hashanah you basically come. Rosh Hashanah is a time when we don't speak about sin. We don't speak about anything that's negative. There's a complete havdalah, separation for everything that we did that's negative. And one of the things that's symbolic we do, we go into a body of water. And we let go of everything that's negative. Like we take the fringes of our garments and like we shake them out. The fringes represents like the external part of ourselves, like what's holding on to the external part of ourselves. And we say, this is not us. This is not who I am. This is what I've done, and I let it go, and I like throw it into the water. So everything that you happened, everything that you experienced throughout the year, that was a little bit negative, things that you perpetuated was negative, or things that were uncomfortable, you just let them go. You throw them into the water. Let them be expunged from you. You let go of them. Then comes the real avodah, the real work, which is the mayim tachtonim boichim, the lower waters that cry. So what is this? The lower water that cries. So in the beginning of the creation, it talks about there's a separation between the water and the water, the upper waters and the lower waters, and the lower waters were separated. Rashi brings down, this is the name of a medrash, which we don't know where the medrash is, but Rashi brings it down. The lower waters were separated, and the lower waters were crying that we too want to be in front of the king. And one of the things that Hashem said, that the response, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them, was that you'll have nischamayim. You're eventually the waters will be poured over the mizbeach, and also the salt and the water. That every offering had to have salt. Salt, by the way, there's a difference between salt and the libation of the water of nischamayim. Is the difference between salt and the water is salt represents the higher level of the lower waters, and nischamayim represents the lower waters of the lower waters, because on a very physical level, salt water is the water that rises higher. So the salt water represents there. And Shafalmai Misasim, when they dug into a well to draw on waters, means you're going into the waters that are even deeper than the salt water. So that's the depth. That's the deepest level of the water. So the response was that one day those waters from the depth, also from the surface of the lower waters, will be offered on the Mizbeach. Now, the process of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur between this time period is that the Ari says that if a person doesn't cry between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in this time period, and crying doesn't mean crying is like an expression of tveikus, of yearning, of longing, of wanting, of desire, that's when a person gagoyim is like longing or yearning, that then a person's soul is not complete. That means, and the Ari also says that when a person cries, that's when they're nidun. That's when a person is being judged. Whenever they're crying, in some period through this time period of the 10 days, there's some period that you wake up to your life and like, wow, I really should, and then like, oh. And that's that moment. That moment, that's the moment you're being judged. So there's a process of water that we're somehow refining ourselves through our own tears. This is why there's also a meaning of custom of Mekabalim, of Kabbalists that say that when a person cries from a place of tshuva, from a place of when a person is davening, praying, or even learning, and there's like tears that are flowing, you should take the tears and wipe your forehead, like wipe yourself, because that's like it's a cleansing. So this is the way the process works. Rosh Hashanah, you go ahead, and you throw everything in the water. Take your whole package, everything that you're dealing with, and you say, Hashem, you have it. You take it. It gets swallowed in the water. I'm throwing it into the water, letting go of it. Through Yom Kippur is the process of the sweetening of this. Come Sukkot, this is Simchat Beis Hashoeiva. This is the Oimik of Simchat Beis Hashoeiva. This is the depth of Simchat Beis Hashoeiva. Come Sukkot, what we say is now we're going to go back to those waters where we threw everything in. The depth of those waters, the deepest depth of those waters, the wells of those waters, deeper than the salt, or deepest place, and we're going to draw out Vashaftim. We're going to draw out those waters. We're going to lift up everything from those waters, everything that was sunk to the bottom of those waters that we threw away, and we let go. Now, so we're going to go back to that place, to the depth of those waters, and we're going to retrieve them. We're going to reclaim those things. It's like It's like the idea of finding the keys when they're lost, but on a much more existential, deeper level. I let go of certain things of myself because I thought that in order for me to grow, and that was true, the only way for me to grow is I had to let go of these things. But there was something that was missing. There was a part of me that was not whole. There was a part of me that was missing, that I let go in this process. Comes to the time of Chag Asaf, the time of gathering together, we say, go back to those waters, the same waters that you threw in everything that back. Now these things were transformed. Now it's Doinis Nasal Kazachias. The negative things actually became a source of merits. Your failings actually became the place of your greatness. And reclaim those places in a positive context. And if you can reclaim those things, what you're actually doing is you're reclaiming your own self. And when you reclaim your own self, those parts of yourself that you let go and you threw into the water because you couldn't deal with them, and you weren't able to deal with them at that time, and you could reclaim them, that's the greatest joy. The joy of the reclaiming of the parts that you threw and you cast into the sea and you threw them away. And Simchat Beis Hashoeiva, we reclaim them. So everything that was hidden, everything that was bakesa, everything that was hidden is thrown to the bottom of the ocean. L'yom chagenu, in the time of the Sukkot, it becomes revealed. That's why the Sukkot represents the time when the full moon and everything is becoming revealed. When everything becomes what that was concealed and thrown in the subterranean, subconscious, whatever you want to call that place. You deposited it there and you wanted to let go of it, and you need to do that at that point at the time. But now comes Sukkot. Now comes Simchat Beis Hashoeiva. You say, I'm going to shafta maimis. I'm going to reclaim those things, and that brings me the greatest joy. That's going to be the joy of the reclaiming of yourself, of your true self and your identity.
Wow, that's true. It's a true reason to dance.
It's true. It is actually a true reason to dance. That's actually an accurate description.
Thank you so much, Rav.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Rav Pinson's podcast. To submit questions or to sponsor a future episode, please email ravpinsonpodcast@gmail.com. The link is in the description below.